CJ 1100 Intro to Criminal Justice. This is week 2. This video is for week 2. I'm going to post 2. One about crime to supplement the material that you're reading about, but also the PowerPoint slideshows about crime, both property crime and violent crime. And then one about why people commit crime. That'll be the second one. Both of these relate to the material in the class. So first of all, you're going to be watching a video from me that I made at Appalachian State University. It's a video that I was asked to talk. It was a speech that I was asked to give as part of a TEDx talk on campus. I'm sure you're familiar with TED Talks. And I just try to make it fun. It's about crime, and this is going to be related to an assignment that you have to do for the class. So look, you'll see in the slides that the PowerPoint slideshow that anything can be a crime, nothing's automatically a crime, and people disagree. What makes something a crime is when it's called a crime in the criminal law. Only certain people get to decide that. Those are legislators. And when you look at the data from the class, you see legislators do not look like the average person. So that raises the possibility that the law and the things we call crime are not necessarily in our interest. Maybe the rich old white guys who write the law are going to ignore behaviors that they do and behaviors that other people do. So that's where that whole presentation TEDx talk came from. And that's how the slideshow starts out for street crime versus white collar and corporate crime. All right, so the reason, so since anything can be a crime and nothing's automatically a crime, that means there's probably things that are really harmful to us that are done with culpability. In other words, they're done with moral and legal responsibility by people, and they're not illegal because they've never been legislated as crimes. So you'll see that the government focuses on street crime, and in particular, as you might expect, they focus on serious crime. Serious crime is a federal term, it's a legal term, a government term for Part 1 index offenses of the Uniform Crime Reports. If you don't know this material, Uniform Crime Reports is discussed in your book. Google it. Part 1 index offenses are the most serious crimes in America. There's 4 violent ones, and there's 4 property ones. You'll see this list. Murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, theft, motor vehicle theft, burglary, arson. Okay? Now, we could talk all about those. There's all kinds of classes about those. But the government says they're the most serious because they happen the most, they're most widespread, and they do the most harm. Well, turns out that's not true. So when we compare the numbers, you'll see that the things that we don't call crime cost us more property and kill and injure more of us. Plus, there's things that are not even included in the definition of serious, like embezzlement, which you'll see, and also fraud. Embezzlement just means that you've given someone legal access to the property or money, but then they misappropriate it or they steal it. And fraud is tricking someone out of their money. And I'll show you in the PowerPoint slideshow, there's entire industries based on fraud. So you can search those terms there. The weight loss industry, stretch mark removing cream, cellulite removing cream, ab machines, and even vitamins and supplements that are being sold with none of the vitamins or supplements in it. Product shrinkage is another one where companies are giving you less and less of the product over time for the same price. So watch when you shop in the grocery stores, you'll see this. So one of the things that I try to do, and I do this in many of my classes for most of my career, including intro, I want you guys to know at the very beginning of a criminal justice focus in your studies that the crimes that our government calls serious are not the most harmful acts. They're not even the most frequently occurring acts. So there's a slide number 11 in your first PowerPoint slideshow about crime, cost of crime and other acts, and you see all the serious street crimes of the Uniform Crime Reports cost about $16 billion. That's according to the FBI. Now, this is direct cost. This is actual property loss or loss of life or work or what have you. But the indirect costs are not included. Quality of life, lack of income because you can't work, things like that. But if you look at all the other kinds of fraud on this chart, all of them add up to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. So I don't know if you're good at math, but hundreds of billions of dollars is bigger than 16 billion, and presumably the fraud's happening more than the other things. That's why it's so high, and yet it's not considered serious. So elite deviance is the term that I use. It comes from a book by the name of Elite Deviance, a man by the name of David Simon, who's a criminologist. You can check it out on Amazon or what have you. It's probably in the library as well. Elite deviance is harmful acts committed by the powerful. So these are illegal acts committed by corporations and wealthy people, white-collar criminals, for example. But it also includes just abnormal or deviant acts that are legal, things that you and I would consider are wrong. And the point is they're committed with culpability. So, for example, if you manufacture a defective product and you knowingly sell it and you don't recall it, even if that were not illegal, you would still think it's wrong, especially if someone in your family died from that product. So that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. So elite deviance is culpable, harmful acts committed by the powerful. Some are illegal and some are not. So I give you several examples. Now, some of these predate your birth. Some of them have happened before you were born. But you can search these and learn more about them if you're interested. Maybe you'll pursue a career in fraud investigation or something. The savings and loan crisis cost somewhere around $427 billion. This happened in the 1980s. The corporate scandals around 2002, 2003 cost us more than $427 billion. Okay, and there's a discussion in the PowerPoint slideshow about what they did. But you can search these terms. There's even a movie made about one of them, Enron. And then the collapse of the U.S. economy in 2008, which you are alive for and probably alert and aware of what's going on, at least to a degree. This financial or banking crisis was caused by deviant behavior on Wall Street and in big banks. I have posted a paper that I wrote about it in your PowerPoint slideshow if you want to learn more about it. Check it out. It describes in great detail what happened in 2008. The total cost was between two different estimates, was between 12 and 22 trillion, trillion dollars. 12 and 22 trillion dollars. That's between 600 and 1100 years of street crime in 1 year. So it's obviously more damaging, happens more, it's more widespread, and it's not considered serious. Now, there is a discussion about possible reasons why, the last slide, number 20, in the PowerPoint slideshow. They are not the same. These acts of elite deviance are not the same as crime. They're not. There are differences. For example, they don't tend to be done intentionally, like if one person kills another on purpose. It's usually indirect. It usually takes a while. It doesn't happen immediately. It's hidden. But most importantly, the people who do it are different. And so one of the things that conflict criminologists, critical criminologists, so-called radical criminologists, one of the things they do is talk about the differences between these offenders and lawmakers. Lawmakers are rich old white men, generally. People that do these generally are rich old white men. That's one possible reason why these things are not considered serious. Now, the next slideshow deals with violence, because a lot of people think that white-collar and corporate crime are just acts against property, which is largely true because most crimes against property, including street crime. The most common street crime of all of them is theft, and the least common, thankfully, is murder. So the same thing happens with white-collar and corporate crime or elite deviance. But I'm going to show you that elite deviance also is very violent. So what I show you on slide number 3 in the second PowerPoint slideshow about elite deviance is murder kills about 15,000 people a year, tobacco 480,000, medical treatment and infection 325,000, poverty, inequality 291,000, on and on and on and on, okay? Hospital error 250,000. Just eating the wrong foods, 395,000 people die a year. Now, you should be skeptical of these numbers. You should find out where they come from. You can Google them, do your own research. I provide sources where appropriate. But these are widely believed numbers by criminologists. So the point is that culpable acts committed by elites kill and injure more people than street crime. Is not even close. So there's a slide there, slide number 4, about deaths from food, and I give you the source. It's from a journal article published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, one of the most prominent journals in the world. This is just the foods that are being processed and sold to us and advertised to us are very deadly. They're not healthy. We're not eating enough of the healthy ones. We're eating too few of the unhealthy ones, or too many of the unhealthy ones, sorry. So the result is death. Now here, this is a good example of how things are different. Nobody forces you to eat the food, right? If you're murdered, you don't choose that. But you choose to eat what you put in your mouth, right? You choose that. But there's lots of research from food science and the science of taste. There's actual research on that if you're interested. That we like the foods we like, and we're sort of genetically predisposed to like high fat, high salt, high sugar foods. So if it's a drug, which I argue it is in a paper I'm about to publish, if fast food's a drug, for example, then there's a dealer of this food. There's a dealer of this drug. Why aren't they being held accountable? We hold drug dealers accountable. Then why don't we hold these drug dealers accountable? Fast food companies, for example. They're the ones that make this food, market it to us, make it look good, make it cheap. And so it kills a lot more people than murder. Okay, so in the slideshow, this comes from my book called Criminal Injustice. If you're interested, I teach a class on this. It's a gen ed class that you can take, so there'll be a lot of overlap here. But you go through these slides, you'll see a slide about defective products, unhealthy foods, dangerous toys, dangerous drugs, hazardous toys, tobacco, and hazardous workplaces. We're not talking about accidents here. Those things happen. We're talking about culpable acts committed by elites. And what you'll see is these things hurt and kill more people than street crime, and it's not even close. I would encourage you to search for the GM ignition switch story. This happened in your lifetime and might affect you or someone in your family. GM produced a car, they knew it had a defective switch, and they didn't fix it. The switch meant that the car would turn off while you're driving it, but your car doesn't stop, it keeps moving. And since everything was hooked up to the ignition switch, you couldn't steer, you couldn't brake. So you're going to hit something, seatbelt does not work, and your airbags don't deploy. So it's a death trap. You'll see the numbers. Somewhere around 120 plus people died from this defective switch. The company, no one was arrested, no one was convicted, no one was incarcerated. Okay, so this is where the idea comes from that criminal justice system is a tool to oppress people or to maintain the status quo. You don't have to believe this anyway, by the way. But it is an interesting argument that people write about in my field, in my discipline, that the criminal justice system is a tool meant to keep poor people down or black people down, and it's really meant to serve the wealthy. Now, again, you don't have to believe that, and I wouldn't expect you to, at least until you at least read the evidence. But this is consistent with that argument that the criminal justice system doesn't go after the things that are most likely to hurt us, kill us, and take our property. Okay. So if you have any questions about these slides or about this material, please message me. I can Zoom with you, or I can reply to your emails as well. And the next slide that you'll see, the next talk you'll see deals with why people commit crime, which is another class that I teach, by the way, called Theories of Crime. It's required for our majors. And I've developed 2 of my own theories, so I definitely know a lot about it. If you have any questions about that too, contact me.